The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries. From Barangaroo Studios, here's what you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, hello. A pleasure to be here with you on this, the 3rd of April for the COB.
Yes,
I'm Nadine Blaney.
And I'm Danny Akuye. And even though I wore a green shirt, I couldn't inspire the market, Nadine. I've been trying my hardest to get this SIBO 200 off the ground.
Yeah, let's take a look at where the SIBO Australia Index has closed. One of my earlier guests today called this a reality check for markets. You know, such a strong start to the year. Of course, it's the beginning of the quarter. We know all of that, but bond yields are responding to a very resilient U.S. economy, and we've got all of this chatter still about rate cuts. Are they being pushed out yet again? That's the damage being done.
Absolutely, and the ASX 200 is off about 103 points, 1.3%, but of course we'll wait and see how some of those last trades go through. But profit taking, but let's have a look at the three themes because it might give some colour of what's been going on. To move a little bit closer.
Yeah, there we go. Sold on gold, good one. Gold miners really, they weren't quite immune to the sell-off, and we had a bit of production updates coming from some of those gold miners, which was the stock of the day. I won't give it all away. Tech also coming under a lot of pressure. Yeah,
so basically a big tech tumble here in Australia. We'll probably get to the sectors, but the likes of tech and property purge, interest rate sensitive sectors really taking the full brunt here in Australia. And it's quite interesting because NASDAQ actually was not the worst performer overnight, yet here in Australia it's been a big sell-off.
Okay, so Xero was actually mentioned on the call today as one of our viewer picks. It came under pressure today. Wisetech Global came under pressure. If we can show these sectors, where we see any signs of life, not here.
No, absolutely, and you're absolutely right. Some pretty chunky selling there in Wisetech. One of the board members has resigned, but I think it's just an excuse there to take profits. And also the likes of Megaport and Life 360, some of those favourites, Ordinate, also under pressure.
These are big falls.
Yeah, they are big falls, but to be fair, some of these stocks have rallied so hard, and at the moment, I think what I think probably doesn't matter, but it's a bit of profit taking, but we'll chat through that with our guest who's coming up.
There you go. There's Perseus Mining up by 1.6%, but elsewhere, as we said, gold not immune to the sell-off that happened today. But it was Westgold that revised its full-year production guidance down. Now expects to produce between 220 and 230 ounces at an all-in sustaining cost of between $2,100 and $2,300. I liked the commentary coming from the company saying that, look, they will not go for production at all costs. Their focus is free cash flow, and saying that they're not happy with what's been happening, but saying that, they will continue to make the decisions, even if it means shutting down production for the interest of their shareholders going forward. So some pretty strong language there.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, Wisetech's non-executive director, Teresa Engelhard, is set to leave the board, and she's a former Origin board member, and she's going to retire to focus on her personal business interests effective Monday.
Mighty Craft, well, that's a bit of a struggling, alcohol provider, maker, whatever you want to call it. It's selling off assets to help cover off some of its debts.
And then Goodman Group, those shares off about 2.4%, but again, it has been rallying hard. So welcome to the COB, Rocco Panzerino from Macro. How are you, Rocco?
I'm good.
That's good. So a bit of a garden variety profit taking going on?
Yeah, a little bit today in the markets. We're obviously at all-time highs yesterday, and we've got a few sectors spooked, as you said, today. But a lot of these companies have rallied quite significantly, especially for this year.
Okay, so when you look across sectors and you're thinking about where opportunities lie or thematics that you guys are liking right now at Macro Capital, where are we looking?
I think it's fairly stock specific at the moment. I've done a little bit of research into the whole solar transition. I think it's quite relevant at the moment with the new legislation passed and the new initiatives that Anthony Albanese has put forward in the past week. He's pledged significant amounts of taxpayer money into solar electricity and a lot of these renewable energy sources. We've also got the opposition government sizing up a counter policy for nuclear energy and also keeping coal for longer than expected as well. Anthony Albanese actually said that Australia has the highest uptake of household solar panels in the world, but we've only got a tiny fraction that are actually made here. So as it stands, look, about a third of Australian households do have solar panels, but only 1% of all these solar panels are made within the country. So he's really launched this initiative to try and build them here. In doing that, he's obviously combating the Inflation Reduction Act over in the US. They've launched this a couple of years ago. We're a little bit late to the party here, and it was actually their most significant action that Congress has taken on cleaner energy. They're invested about $520 billion into this act, and they're about 10 to 12 the size of Australia based on population. And in relative terms, our investment's significantly lesser to theirs. So a lot of these significant initial costs have deferred a lot of people from getting involved with solar. And contradictingly, the government's actually reduced the subsidies in 2024 for solar electricity. But the cost of production and the installation is also on a steady decline, which is attributable to those drops. But it's definitely become a viable investment, not only for households, but obviously for governments as well. And nonetheless, it's a good start, but it seems we are a little bit late to the party compared to our counterparts.
So what are you saying, that there are companies here that would allow you to invest in Aussie-made, Aussie-grown solar panels?
It's a little bit hard at the moment. Obviously, this investment is used to trigger that. We have been looking at an ETF called TAN. They're getting quite creative with their tickers, these ETF.
That's in the US though, isn't it?
It's in the Australian.
Oh, they've got one in Australia.
Yeah, it's by Beta Shares. The demand for these solar-powered energy solutions is set to grow considerably over the next 10 to 20 years. Reflects basically a critical role that we've got in combating global warming. At the moment, only about 3% of the world's energy supply comes from solar. It's expected to be about 30% by 2050. TAN is basically giving you exposure to the whole supply chain for solar. So you're not only just getting solar panels, it's the financing, it's the energy storage, the production, the installation across the board. At the moment, it is predominantly based over in the US, with exposure over in the US. But obviously, these initiatives that the government's launching recently will help. And a lot of these companies based in the US that are in this ETF are doing works in Australia at the moment. It's really good as well to obviously get that exposure to the US clean energy incentives, such as the tax credits and direct payments provided by that act that I mentioned earlier. And retail investors can obviously take advantage of this as well, as long with sophisticated investors. You would have to be quite careful with this one. Look, the thematic for solar energy is a very, very longer term thematic. And when adding to the portfolio, be mindful because it is quite thinly traded at the moment.
It's also very interest rate sensitive. A lot of these stocks have been quite heavily hit because of higher interest rates, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, but realistically, we don't have too many options on our market with solar at the moment. So, very longer term.
I can tell you I have Solar Edge on my system.
Yeah, all right. Well, you know.
They're the interconnectors between the solar panels.
Yeah. Anecdotal. So is there any Chinese exposure? Because China is where we know that a lot of these solar panels come from.
Yeah, it's predominantly US, but there is a slight amount of Chinese exposure as well.
And so when you're thinking about this, if you are thinking about this, you want to get advice, this would be very much what we call a satellite edition, right? When it comes to ETF land. You're not going to want to have exposure to this thematic through any stocks specifically, if you've also got exposure through your ETF, and it would be not a main component.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not an advisor, obviously, right?
No, you're
You'd have to be very
right,
careful how you use it.
Extremely careful, yeah. If you believe in the longer term thematic, especially those people with the ESG portfolios who like this sort of thematic, I recommend be careful with it, but keep the allocation size to a minimum. But it's a good way to get exposure because it's so many countries embedded within it and so many different areas across the supply chain of solar energy.
Use your sunscreen, but get ready for a bit of a tan. I finally put the two together, solar, tan. Pretty clever, Beta Shares.
Oh, fantastic. Rocco, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate your time. All right, let's get to the stock of the day. We talked about it earlier. It's Westgold. Philip Pepe from Shawn Partners and Henry Jennings from Marcus Today.
I'm going to call this a hold. Nobody likes a downgrade, so if you've ridden the 11% down, well, the market's efficient. It's priced in the news. I would just hold it, because if the gold price keeps going the way it's going and they resume some of that production, which is what they're aiming to do, share price should start to recover from tomorrow onwards.
The 12% fall today, there'll probably be a little bit more to come as research houses look at winding back their price targets, but this could be a good buying option. If it got down to, say, $2.20, which is another sort of 10% here, I think that would be a good opportunity to get some exposure through this one.
Look, Danny, it wasn't a buy today because I said that, when you get a downgrade like this, it takes a bit of time to shake it out. But they definitely weren't negative on this one. If you want to listen to their whole analysis of that stock and 10 others, you can listen to.
And you had some good ones today, didn't you? Pro Medicus was up there. Did they like that one?
No, they're actually saying perhaps trim and take some profits. Ooh. Yeah, but again, that conversation that you and I have had many times about quality. Do you pay for quality? The lack of a lot of quality out there. It's really tough for Australian investors.
It is tough for Australians.
You need to watch us.
Absolutely. And let's go to the leaders and the laggards. So a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it, in the leaders? Nadine, we've got Ramelius, West African Resources, Emerald Resources, Suncorp and Perseus Mining, all up between around 1.5% to almost 6%.
I don't see any news associated with Suncorp, so that's a bit of a random one.
Yeah.
Some of the laggards, let's see if we can see any big thematic here. Credit Corp, Xero in the tech space, Neuron, again, these companies that can really get thrown out with the bathwater when you have a negative session as well. And Telix Pharmaceuticals, I know that they've got a company update, I think, coming out later this week, so watching that one with much interest, but it's either one of the best performers or worst performers.
Absolutely, very volatile. And in the smalls, well, we have 88 Energy, Xanadu Mines, 29 Metals returning to a rally, as well as Anson Resources.
Yeah, no, I didn't host the little small caps program today, so I never have anything much to add these days. But Pharmost is one that has been requested for the call next week, I know, on behalf of a viewer. Bubs, off by 8.7%, and Smart Parking there, which I've spoken with on the call many times with Claude and Lou.
Now, just letting everybody know, I spoke to the Managing Director of MTM Critical Minerals with their announcement today. So they're into critical metals extraction and manufacturing in the US. Market didn't particularly like what they had to say, but nevertheless, check it out. And also AML 3D, the 3D printing operations. They've had a rights issue, that's why their shares were down today. But really interesting what they're doing in the US with their new Ohio hub. So a couple of small caps for those of you that love smalls.
Yeah, we love smalls, and you can find plenty of coverage on our website. And those two interviews Danny just referenced will be up there online for you to watch at your leisure throughout the afternoon, ausbiz.com.au. I sort of forgot. I keep thinking it's Tuesday when it's Wednesday.
It's all confusing.
Yeah, but we've got non-farms coming on Friday, which is why we get the ADPs tonight.
Absolutely. It's the week. We go from JOLTS to ADP to non-farm. We've got US ISM service PMIs. Fed Chair Powell speaks, probably pretty important, particularly with the sell-off that we've seen in Treasury yields, and OPEC Plus producers meet, because that oil price has been pretty punchy, Nadine.
Yeah, just on that ISM, I know we spoke with David Scuddy, as we call him around here. He reckons that that's going to be pretty important when it comes to the US dollar and global rates. And of course, every word that Fed Chair Powell says will be hung on. We've got a lot of Fed speakers, and Mester, for one, last night was not overly enthusiastic when it came to early rate cuts, at least. We'll see.
Absolutely. And the day ahead tomorrow, building approvals for February, New Zealand building permits, Japan's 30-year bond auction, and a couple of stocks going ex-dividend, ARB and Lindsay Australia.
Wow.
And, a wrap up. Well, I think we can all safely say that the start to this quarter, it's been a bit of a bumpy start. ASX 200 off 105 points, or around 1.34% to 7,782.
Yeah, I thought maybe just take a little look at where US futures are pointing, given, we're laden with some data tonight. We've got a very data-dependent Fed, as they have told us many, many, many times. E-minis, both S&P 500 and NASDAQ E-minis, are coming under a bit of pressure. as we speak.
But it's interesting, the Aussie dollar was quite a bit weaker earlier on, but it looks like that the Aussie dollar is green in a few other currencies against the US dollar, and often when you see the US dollar weakening, sometimes that can be a little bit of a leading indicator that those futures might turn.
Okay, so lots to look out for tonight. Tomorrow we've got obviously great guests lined up. We'll have a little visit virtually from Kyle Rudda, who's joining us from Capital.com. We've got Raymond Chan joining us from Morgans. Andrew Whiteland will give us probably something along the lines of 3 ETFs. You think?
Perfect.
Yep, Roger Montgomery, and we've got Grady Wolf and Howard Coleman. Yeah, in
busy
studio
day
for the call. We've got a great one coming up tomorrow. As if you missed anything from a great day today, you can catch up.
Absolutely. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you bright and early 9:45 a.m. tomorrow.
The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Gil.
Oh, hey, Ken.
Here we go.
You still trading?
Pepperstone. Trusted in over 160 countries. You?
Well, I'm still with...
I don't think anyone trusts them.
No, I'm fine with it. Just like I'm fine with my trusty coach. 1980s John McEnroe.
Pathetic! Horrible! 1980s, huh? So, really temperamental?
Keeps me on my toes.
Awful! It's a bit intense.
Be better.
Still fine with it.
Use your racket.
He's just staring at us.
Yeah, sometimes he yells and then sometimes he just stares.
Is he aiming for your face, Gil?
He's fine with it.
Yeah, he's definitely trying to hit you.
Fine with it.
Don't be fine with it. Switch to Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Come on, you cannot be serious.
Don't do that.
Ow.